Hi, my name is Tiffany Beers, and I lead innovation, sustainability, and audio engineering for Logitech G. I'm going to introduce Olivia. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Olivia Burca, and I lead sustainability for gaming.
My name is Ahmed Riaz, and I lead design for gaming.
My name is Padraig Murphy. I'm the Senior Manager Design for Sustainability.
Welcome to the Sustainability panel. Padraig, let's start with you. So can you summarize Logitech's approach to climate action?
Sure, Tiffany. I guess Logitech, we break our strategy into 4 pillars. The first pillar is reduce, and it's really the center of our strategy. And it's about reducing the impact of our operations. So that means reducing the impact of our products by designing them for sustainability, making more efficient manufacturing processes. The second piece of our strategy is renew. Renew is really focused on the front line. So this is around supporting climate-affected communities, action to support climate change-affected ecosystems. Another pillar is renew. So that's a really important pillar for us. That's about switching our energy sources to non-fossil fuel-based energy, renewable energy in our supply chains, in our offices, in our factories. And finally, we have rethink, which is really about thinking about the future and making sure we're lined up with the ingredients and the technologies and the business models we need to succeed.
Excellent. I mean, they're all, I think in the world today, we've heard about them all, but so it's good to hear that we have 4 pillars at Logitech. So Olivia, over to you. How would you describe Logitech G's ambition in designing product following some of the pillars that Padraig just mentioned?
Yeah, so to do that, firstly, you have to understand the impact that you already have. We can't move forward unless we've understood our past. And we have a program at Logitech which is designed for sustainability. We also call it DFS to abbreviate it. And what this program really does is it breaks it into 3 categories. First, we take a look at our existing products, everything that's already out there in the market, and then we drive ambitious programs around those to improve what's there in the market today. Then the second one being our new products. So how do we design for sustainability for all of the new products that we're launching? We have tools, calculators, and the DFS team that helps our product development team to really understand as well as drive down our environmental impact. And then thirdly, what we call breakthroughs. This is really the innovation aspect. This is how do we improve our materials? How do we improve process or components? And an example of that is actually low carbon aluminum. Logitech launched low carbon aluminum about last year, and in our portfolio in gaming, one product that we use low carbon aluminum is our A10 Gen 2 product. But that's just one example. We'll be rolling out low carbon aluminum in many more products.
Awesome. That's great. So the Astro A10 has low carbon aluminum in it. Fantastic.
Exactly.
So Riaz, over to you. So how do you apply this approach, I guess specifically in the second bucket that Olivia mentioned in the NPIs, the new designs?
That's a great question. I mean, there are 3 types of things that we really try to look at. I think first of them is what materials we use. It's a great example with the low carbon aluminum. And just kind of making sure that we're using the right kind of plastics as well. Reusable plastics as much as possible. And I think the second thing that we try to do is when we're doing MPIs, we're realizing that really looking at reducing even different sizes of things, milling out the inside of products. You know, we've gone to places where it's actually really beneficial in a lot of ways. It can be lighter and use less material at the same time. And so we're getting very clever at like how to do that, but still retain the strength of the object itself. And then the third thing is really thinking about circularity. How do you create something that can be fixed or can end of life in a really good way? And so those are the types of things that we really love to think about. The thing about circularity, I think, is Logitech's actually a great space for that, because our brand is known for having that stability, having something that lasts for a long time. It works really, really well with the sustainability.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting on the circularity. So, Padraig, from the DFS standpoint, what's the approach when you target and work with the gaming team on new products?
I think the goal that we set ourselves a few years back was that sustainability and environmental impact should be part of every design decision. So we should be thinking about sustainability just like we think about cost, just like we think about user experience. And so that means very early in the design process, setting targets. So it's easy to say sustainability. It's not so easy to measure it. So we've set some categories, just like Riaz mentioned. We have carbon reduction and we have circularity. And we use those two buckets to track our progress. And we're really rigorous about this. So just in the same way that we track the progress of a project in time, we track the likely impact of our project, of a product. And we set targets and we set references to other products. Yeah, so we have a really evolved process for ensuring that one product is more sustainable than the previous generation.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's dive into that carbon transparency. Why is that important when you're talking about product design?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So carbon transparency, or our program to put a carbon label on all of the boxes, there's lots of reasons we've done that. I guess the first is that we believe that consumers should be able to make informed decisions, just in the same way that you can look at the packaging of food and you can find out about the nutrition of the food. We believe you should be able to understand the same thing about a product that you buy. So all of our labeled products now show their carbon footprint. I guess the second thing we're trying to do is to affect change in the industry. So we're trying to agitate and to encourage our industry partners and our competitors to come along with us and do this. We're the first to do it, and we're sharing all of our know-how and the knowledge that we have around that. And I guess the third reason is a little bit under the hood, but it's the fact that the process of calculating those and finding out what the carbon footprint is helping us to make better design decisions for the next generation of products. So it's a kind of a virtuous circle, if you like. Yeah.
Interesting. And it seems like as you learn about this, just from my own experience learning about this process, like I'm learning skills and tools to take with me as I look at all of our innovation and products, which is really fascinating. So back to this carbon label, Olivia, where do we find the carbon label?
You can find it directly on our products. So you can look on our website, you can look just on the boxes themselves. We have about 7 products that have this carbon impact label. So you'll see all of our products right now are carbon neutral, but there's a few, if you look out for them, like the G213, the G903, the G Pro wireless mouse, and a couple of other ones, but we have about 7 today that have a carbon impact number. And our ambitious goal is by 2025, our entire portfolio is going to have a carbon impact number. So we are really looking at every product that we make, doing a life cycle analysis on it to understand the impact of them so that we can make better decisions for the future.
Well, first, that sounds like a lot of work, and I know it is because I see you all working so hard. Congratulations, first of all, that's awesome. What is actually behind that number, though? Like, are we going to see, like, give me an example of a number, and then tell me about that. You mentioned the life cycle goes into that, or Padraig, what's behind that number? Like, what does that actually mean?
So that number really, when we take a look at the life cycle analysis, it really is from the moment we're sourcing raw materials to the moment where it's in production, the products themselves, the manufacturing. We take into consideration the usage of the product, how many times it might be charged, how the consumer is actually using it, and then the end of life. So is the product going to be recycled? Is it going to be reused? Is it going to end up in landfill? We take that entire calculation to provide, that's essentially what the LCA is, but Padraig could probably go deeper into that.
It is, and it's an incredibly complicated process to estimate this. So the fact that we're putting these labels on the box means that we have to have some third parties certified or validated by an organization called DECRA. And that means that we have to go to the nth level of detail. So, for example, we don't just calculate the impact of the paint that ends up in a product. We calculate the impact of the paint that never made it to the product that ended up in the waste. We calculate the impact of the pallets that are used to ship the products. Everything that you can imagine that's associated with the journey of the product, from the materials being extracted from the mine right through to the product being renewed or recycled or perhaps repaired and reused at end of life. Everything associated with that generates global warming associated gases is calculated. It's a massive undertaking per product. Yeah,
it sounds like it. So you're monitoring the process, if you will, from the entire start till the consumer gets it, even some of their use, everywhere where carbon might be produced.
Yeah. We're asking questions of our suppliers that I think they've never been asked before. You know, so this is
they must love that.
They love it. They love us for it. But it is the beginning of a new way of doing business, a new way of designing, I think, where more and more people are taking account of the carbon impact of products. So it's really exciting to be at the forefront of that within consumer electronics.
Interesting. So Riaz, from a design perspective, how do these numbers play into your process?
I mean, I have to say one of the things is that, you know, early on, we tried to calculate these things ourselves, and it was really hard. And we realized very quickly that we really depend on Padraig's team to provide us those numbers. And it's hard to calculate. And what happens in the design process is, you know, I always say design is just, design quality is just iteration. And you need to iterate as much as fast as possible. And so having someone that can really help us with those numbers, and I know it's hard, we're always asking you to give them to us faster, but having someone that can help us with those numbers and really kind of understand a little bit deeper, hey, what happens if I tweak this one? What happens if I do this? Like really kind of connecting them to actual choices that we're making. And those choices might be something like, repairability for a battery, right? Might shift a number quite a bit. Some examples you could think of there.
Yeah.
Or it could be something like, you know, what happens if we just shorten the length of this mic a little bit here and reduce entire materials. So we're making all those choices and all those trade-offs, but I think the team together is really helping us constantly kind of give us that support, without which I think the early calculators we were using, we were just sort of fishing in the dark.
Yeah. Interesting. It makes for a complicated, but also must be an exciting process, because when you get a low number, do you celebrate? Do people celebrate when they get a low number?
We do.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think it's part of a rediscovery of what good design is. Maybe it's broadening what the definition of good design is. And, you know, maybe at one time there were other aspects of a product's design that weren't so intuitively understood as being good quality. And now, you know, carbon impact is becoming part of that definition too, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in design school, we learned about cradle to cradle, right? And I remember there was this book that was like made out of plastic, you know, it would never die. And, you know, it's a source of real pride that we're trying to do that here. And we're trying to do that today, and we're trying to do it at this place. And so, you know, it's huge.
Yeah,
it's surprising sometimes when we look back at our existing portfolio. I think, Padraig, you had mentioned about this, but some products that we made in the past were actually a little bit more sustainable, and just learning from that as well is interesting and kind of a surprise. So something we might think we just did it for, you know, a couple of years ago just for the design's sake, but actually was quite clever. So there's so much to learn about what we've already done, as well as working with our suppliers too, just to provide them our expectations too.
Yeah.
So in some cases, we were designing sustainable product without even knowing it.
Yeah.
Now we got to bring that back.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so let's go down that path a little bit. Let's go around the table. What is a sustainable gaming product? Tell me how you would each define it.
I might sound a little bit repetitive, but to Padraig's earlier point, the word sustainable, right? It's overused. Sometimes it's confusing. Sometimes it's just easy to say. So when we talk about it, we really just let's analyze everything we've done today. It's so important, and that's why the carbon impact number is so important. But then really taking a look at it from a carbon and a circularity point. And for us as a company, when we talk about circularity, we're talking about renewable materials. We're talking about design for longevity. We're talking about designing products so they're easier to eventually recycle, as well as products that could be potentially reused. So it's also taking a look at the commitments we've made and said and holding ourselves accountable for that, because it's a huge undertake. Yeah.
Okay. Riaz?
I think a lot of the same things, but I would just sort of say, like, you know, this idea of like balancing the carbon and the circularity is something that we've learned too, because sometimes a little more plastic can actually make it more circular, right? Like if you want to open the battery door, you need to add a bit of that. So it's really interesting. You need to sort of have those two angles. The one additional thing I would add is for the circular side, I think you also need a business model that understands how that can work. And so for me, I think one of the really interesting innovations is building on top of those two things. But within gaming, we've also sort of experimented with business models of like, hey, what do you do with all these headsets when they're end of life? Maybe we give them to some good charity, or maybe we're able to like refurbish them and have them live on in different ways. Those are not just ideas; they need to have financial backing to be really real.
Yeah.
And so I think we've gone through a few of those experimentations, and you know, I think that's part of a good sustainable product at gaming.
Excellent. Padraig, yours is no gaming product at all?
That's definitely the most sustainable, but not the most fun, maybe.
It's hard to use.
So I think if you're going to continue to game, and I think we are, I think as in it, like we have made, I think, a lot of progress in understanding what we need to do and the direction we need to go in. But I think as an industry, we're a long way off being able to say we're making truly sustainable products. So I think that's the first thing, is being able to acknowledge that, understanding where you're starting from. And then I think, we have these design principles. There are sustainable design principles. We have 15 of them. And what it means is that sustainability is manifesting differently in different products. So in a headset like the G435, optimizing the architecture and making it as light as possible is the thing that makes a whole lot of sense, because it also adds to the comfort. In another product, it might be about really emphasizing the durability and the longevity and the repairability of the product. And so I think it's really interesting to think that sustainability isn't a single parameter, that there are many levers that you can pull to nudge the products towards that. And again, back to what Olivia said, which is really important, which is that actually we don't use the word sustainability, we use the word impact. Yeah. And it's really about reducing impact. That's the more kind of probably rigorous way of looking at it, So again, we're constantly measuring our carbon impact with reference to a previous product, and we're constantly measuring our circularity as well. So it's coming back to holding ourselves account and making sure we don't get carried away all the time with our own story. That's important.
So it's a fine balance. It's a shifting of levers depending on the business model. So you mentioned the 435. Let's go back to that headset.
Yeah.
What other, I'll use your word, impacts, what other design things do we do to reduce the impact of that product?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows that's a great product just as a product, first of all. Some of the things that were done in the course of the design of that product, they're extraordinary. The effort, the conversations that were had, it was really exciting, I know, for the team at the time. I mean, even down to the design of the ear cup, which, affected the design of the printed circuit board inside, which affected the placement of the controls, and which led to a much, much more efficient manufacturing process. Because of our carbon labeling, we know the impact of printed circuit board manufacture. So we were able to eliminate a lot of carbon in that. That's just one example. It's obviously, it uses recycled materials. I think 22% of that product is made from old products, which is really exciting. And what's even more exciting is that it's not painted, which means that when it reaches its end of life, it will become another product too. So it's the beginnings of a kind of a circular model with that. The packaging was hugely innovative, eliminating plastics. Yeah, there was a whole lot went into that product. It's very exciting.
Yeah, and to add to that, we always use a proxy. So when we're making improvements, we used the G533 as a comparison product to make improvements, and we were able to reduce 40% of our carbon compared to that original product. And with the G435s, we were able to save 240 tons of CO2 per 100,000 products that we made, which is pretty big. It's impressive. And it's our lightest headset in our entire portfolio.
Woo, woo. So Riaz, I know for the A10, the Astro A10 Generation 2, a huge amount went into reducing the impact of that product. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things there, the last generation of that product was completely, it was very hard for it to be refurbished.
Yeah.
It had things that were glued on, and you would basically destroy the product. And I remember at the time, we would get all the kind of returns back at the Astro office. And I remember walking through that office and just seeing bins full of these things and being like, are we going to do something with that? And they're like, yeah, don't look there, and I don't know. I mean, this is around the time that people remember this, like San Francisco, the orange sky. It's like we had this day where like the sun didn't come out, and it was right at the beginning of the product design of that product. And I think the day after we came back to the team and I said, this is our highest volume product. If we don't do something for this, we're going to miss a huge opportunity. And frankly, I think we need to really take that opportunity. So for the product itself, I mean, like it has all the cushions come off and you can clean it all out. In fact, I think it can all be dismantled in a fairly interesting way, and it uses less composite materials, and even the materials it uses are all recycled. So I think we really pushed the hardest we could to make that an example, and then surprised ourselves of how well we did, and then apply that example to all the other products. Yeah. And I think that principle also was really nice, rather than going in saying we're going to do everything at once, because then maybe what you tend to do is like improve everything a little bit. Yeah. But if you go deep in one, you can really raise the bar, and then you apply that raised bar to everything. That's been really meaningful for us.
Yeah, and observing the A10 design and the 435, which started after, you saw people naturally making better choices and really pushing the envelope. So that brings me to my last question. I want to roundtable again. And I find myself asking myself this a lot, are we doing enough? Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question. It's a good question. When I first joined the team, I was so excited to just tell everybody, oh, this is what we should do. And we can make so many improvements here. But I was actually just so impressed by the amount of work that everybody is doing from every single discipline. It's a huge undertake. There's so many pathways. As we mentioned, there's a lot of different aspects that we have to take into account. And so when we look at gaming peripherals in general, it is truly impressive what we're doing, hands down. But when we take a look from like the grand scheme of things, though, we aren't doing enough. It's not a small thing. It needs urgency around it, and there's so much collaboration, not just from our teams, but globally from every company that needs to get on board. The more we learn about sustainability, even internally and externally, the more we just learn how much we don't know.
Yeah.
So,
and I imagine that's why, Padraig, you mentioned we're sharing it. We're sharing all of the information so that we can take everyone on this journey with us. So do you feel like we're doing enough?
Well, no, but I think that that's part of trying to do the right thing. It's beginning to realize how big the challenge is. Just like you said, Olivia, I think there is, in terms of everybody else, I think what you realize as you look into this is that we're part of a connected system in many profound ways, but also very practically in terms of our supply chain. And so it is an outreach, and it is about partners, like we spoke about carbon transparency. It's about collaboration, sharing information, transparency. All of that stuff is important. That's not shifting the blame. That's just acknowledging that we're in this together. I would say that the other thing is the scale of the challenge can be daunting and can feel overwhelming, but it's also very exciting because I think for us to really succeed at this, it's a really exciting design challenge, really exciting innovation challenge. So I guess for a company like Logitech, that's an exciting thing to look at. So it's both daunting and exciting, and we have a lot more to do, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. And from your standpoint, Riaz?
We're not doing enough.
Okay, so it's unanimous.
It's unanimous. We're not doing enough. I mean, the Earth needs it, right? Like there's mountain ice caps melting. I think from a design standpoint, because we do comparisons from previous products where we didn't do anything or weren't thinking about it as much, let's say, there's a huge amount of improvement we can have. I think what's going to get really interesting is when we have less improvements and over time, and what do we need to do then? I think at some point we might need to think about not only how we're designing our products, but fundamentally shifting the businesses that we're in order for us to kind of really make that dent. And really thinking about, as a company that's building products at a regular pace, and we joked about like, well, the best product is no product. That is a real question. And so how do we kind of think about that? Because we're already adding intelligence into our products. We're already adding kind of sustainability considerations in there. And maybe we even start thinking about services that are kind of part of it. And so really kind of thinking incredibly creatively will take us to the next path. So I think we have a few generations down where we have to shift things.
Awesome.
And think big.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you for your honesty and great answers. And let's all go do more, I guess.
Sounds
All right.
good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.